Hey everybody, this is part 2 of a 2-part series on bass fishing, where to start. Last video we talked about your rod, reel, some stuff that you need. In this video we're going to talk about how to fish. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to 3 baits. These are 3 baits that I use a lot and I catch a lot of fish on them. I'm going to need to wear my reading glasses. I made some notes and I need reading glasses. So the first thing we're going to talk about is topwater. Okay, topwater is without a doubt one of the most fun ways to catch bass. These are the river to sea Whopper ploppers. This is the big one, but I recommend that you start with the Whopper plopper size 130. It's a smaller one. I catch a ton of fish on this. The reason for that, it's going to work really good on lighter line like that 8-pound test monofilament. By using monofilament line, it already floats, so it's going to make it easier to work this bait. Now, there's a couple of knots that you need to get to know. They're very easy knots. I have links to them of guys that got good close-ups, so I don't need to really show you how to tie the knot. They do a great job. Just cut and paste, go to the YouTube search engine, you're going to find these sites. The 2 knots that I recommend is an improved clinch knot and a Palomar knot. That's all you need. An improved clinch knot and a Palomar knot. They're really not that hard to tie. And so I encourage you to look at those videos on how to tie those knots. Now when I'm using a Whopper plopper, I'm going to use the Palomar knot. I just think it's a little better for this technique. Now we're going to talk about 3 things when it comes to each one of these baits. How to rig them, when and where to use them, and how to retrieve them. So how to rig it, real simple, your Palomar knot. When and where to use it. My favorite time for topwater is when I have maybe some overcast, it's early in the morning, it's later in the evening, or I've got wind that's creating current on top of the water. What's interesting, we were out there this last weekend, it was really calm, but the fish were still feeding on the surface in the morning, and we were getting them on topwater. So how do you retrieve it? When I'm talking about a retrieve, I mean when you cast it out, how do you bring it back? Well, there's nothing like showing you. In this next video, I didn't realize it, but my wife told me she's never caught a bass on a topwater. It was her first time. So she cast out, and I want you to notice to the left of her how she's working this bait. I'm sorry for the sun reflection. We don't know this when we're out filming. But I want you to look to the left and watch how she brings in that Whopper plopper. You're going to see her start it, stop it, kind of pop it a little bit, or just work it along the top of the water. That's how you retrieve it. Check out the video.
Oh.
You got your first one. There you go. Just bring him in. You got 40-pound braid. There you go.
All right.
Your first Whopper plopper bass.
First topwater bass. My first fish on a topwater.
The second bait I want to introduce you to is a spinnerbait. I've shared with you before that when I started out fishing, I started out with a Texas rig worm, which I'm eventually going to show you, and I started out with a spinnerbait. Okay, that's all I knew. That's what my dad taught me. That's how I started out in bass fishing. So a spinnerbait is very simple. The way I'm going to tie a spinnerbait on, and you can get them all different ways, okay, but the way I'm going to tie a spinnerbait on is I'm going to go ahead and use a clinch knot. Seems to work just fine. This spinnerbait's got a lot of colors in it. You can get that, but I suggest that you just use a white and yellow. It's white and chartreuse. I like the willow blades, especially this time of year. And I do have a recommendation for you on a Strike King spinnerbait that works really good right now in the summer. So I would encourage you to do that. But what's really neat about spinnerbaits is you can take these skirts off and you can put swim baits on them. You can do all kinds of things with this. And the retrieves are really easy. I mean, you can work them, you can let them sink to the bottom, work them real slow. You can work them in the middle of the water column. But this time of year, I like working them right under the surface. I'm going to show you that in just a minute. How to rig it? Tie on an improved clinch knot. Where and when to use it? Early in the morning, late in the afternoon, when you have some wind current on the water, when the fish are actively feeding up top or anywhere, and you know, it's just the perfect conditions are the overcast for me. But the other day we were catching them in high sun early in the morning, no wind. They were feeding on the surface. They were coming right up and get it. So on this video, I'm going to show you how to retrieve a spinnerbait, especially in the summer going into the fall. Next bait I want to talk about is a spinnerbait. A spinnerbait is really easy to retrieve. My wife likes to throw hers on a spinning rod and reel, so I'm just going to use hers. And the way I do it, I kind of like to use them in anywhere up to maybe up on the bank line or just out up to maybe 10-12 feet. I don't really like using the spinnerbait any deeper than that. But you can let it float down, or excuse me, sink down, hit the bottom, and slow roll it really deep if you want. My favorite way to throw a spinnerbait, and I caught one a little while ago doing it just this way, is I like for the spinnerbait, and I want you to hopefully see this, I like for the spinnerbait to be right under the surface. So if you're watching this spinnerbait, it's right under the surface. I'm not letting it go any deeper than that. So when I'm retrieving it, I'm keeping it under just under the surface. So I'm going to cast it out, and I'm going to put my rod tip high, and immediately start working it all the way back to the boat. And if you notice the little wake it makes, you can get it right on the top, kind of let one of the blades splash out, and it looks like little fish trying to get away. And that's all you do. And it's a very, very simple way of doing it. Just remember, right under the surface, especially in shallow water, is when it works the best. And that's how you fish a spinnerbait.
I was just going to say, what if they would a spinner or a swimbait? Or is that a chatterbait?
There you got it. Yep, rolled it right over the top. Make sure I get me in. Buddy. All right. Spinnerbait bass. Rolling it right on the top. He loved it. So did I.